I want to start with quoting myself. I think when I die, this is the phrase I want to be most remembered with. So all of you who survived me, remember that. All right? All right, that's that the world is a maladaptive solution to a non-existent problem. All right? If I say so myself, I think it's a brilliant phrase. It's not very pretty, but I've always liked that because it really summarizes what the issue is. All right? The world is maladaptive because it doesn't work. All right? It's a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. And if you could always keep that in mind, it would help you learn not to be angry. How can you be angry at something that is so blatantly silly? And what could be sillier than having a solution that doesn't work for a problem that doesn't exist? Think about that each and every time you get angry, you get annoyed, right? Or you feel good about something. Anything that is external, any time you give anything that's external the power to make you happy, to bring you peace, or to make you sad, or to bring you pain, you are looking at this and you're saying this is a truly adaptive solution to a real problem, which of course is exactly what the ego wants. That's why the world is a bad idea, because it's a maladaptive solution to a non-existent problem. Right. The problem is that we not only don't know the problem is non-existent, we don't even know the problem that's non-existent. This just shows you how far removed we have come from making any meaningful progress towards undoing the true problem. Right? So that before we could realize the problem is non-existent, we first have to acknowledge that there's a problem. Only then can we learn that it's non-existent. And as most of you know, the world was literally made to keep the non-existent problem hidden. And as long as we think there is a world, we unconsciously believe there is a problem, because the world is the solution to the problem. Without the problem, there'd be no world. So each and every time we feel dependent on the world, which means each and every time we take a breath, let alone everything else we do to keep our bodies alive and well, physically, psychologically, socially, etc. Each and every time we do this, there's a part of our mind that is secretly reminded, there's that problem. That's why we are so identified with the body, so identified with the body's home, which is the world, because we believe that keeps at a distance this terrible, terrible problem. Right, so what is this terrible, terrible problem? Right? The terrible, terrible problem is that we believe we've separated from our Creator and our Source. That's what the Course refers to as the tiny, mad idea. But since there is no tiny, mad idea, since we never separated from our Creator and Source, because oneness, perfect oneness can't separate from itself, love does not have an opposite, since it's never happened, the problem can't be the tiny mad idea. The problem is we believe there's a tiny mad idea. That's the problem. So the world is not really the projection of the tiny mad idea, because there is no tiny mad idea. The world is the projection of the belief there's a tiny mad idea. That's a very, very important distinction. Without understanding that distinction, there's no hope. Because what that distinction highlights is the problem is our belief in it. Which gets us to the very important question is, what is the hour? Who is the hour that believes in the tiny mad idea? And the hour is what we refer to here as the decision-making part of our minds. That is the problem. That's where the problem is. When Jesus tells us in the Course that God put the Holy Spirit where the problem is, that's what that's talking about. The Holy Spirit is in the part of the mind that chose wrongly. Therefore, the solution also is in the part of the mind that chose wrongly. So if we think the problem is the world, or we think the problem is the tiny mad idea, or any other aspect of that tiny mad idea, sin, guilt, fear, suffering, pain, death, etc., If we think that's the problem, there's no hope. The problem has to be taken back to its true source, which is in the part of the mind that chooses, that chose for the ego, and therefore can correct itself and choose for the Holy Spirit. So the world then represents the decision, the mind's decision for the ego. So again, while we frequently talk about how the world represents the ego, what we really mean behind that is the world represents the part of us that chose the ego. And the world then becomes this massive smokescreen that prevents us from looking at what the ego thought system is, which prevents us from looking at the decision for the ego thought system.